Hey everybody, this is Noah back again for another episode of the series of thought bubbles that I have, which is my video journaling series. Today is episode 23. A couple of things. If you haven't watched the last one, I've only been able to record like right now, which I'm gonna get my thing. Let me grab my iPad real quick. As you can see, it is 1 a.m. That's not 1 p.m. It's 1 a.m. right now. This is like the only time that I had to record because like I'm gonna give you a long explanation of why I procrastinated. Basically, I got off of work and I took a nap, and then I got up and watched League of Legends, which is not great for like my sleep schedule, nor is it great for like I don't know, being productive. But I'm here now. Anyway, it's 1 a.m. and I'm recording these, and hence why like I'm in the nighttime setup where like I have my one light over there, and that's just how it is. Anyway, today I kind of wanted to talk about something I read in my book, which I'm gonna pull out right now. Long story short, um, I've been trying to get back into reading. Ironically enough, I just did a video. My last video that I recorded like maybe like a few minutes ago was about like being performative, which is like basically go watch it if you want to hear my thoughts on it. But like I feel like a lot of one of the things that kind of falls under this narrative of like being performative or being the performative male is like, oh, you like read. But like I genuinely enjoyed reading for a long time. I read a lot in like high school, I think, and for some reason when I got to college I kind of stopped and I like didn't read as much, but I'm trying to get back into it. So my general rule of thumb is to just buy a book anytime I want to buy something for like leisure. So let's say like I'm gonna buy like Pokemon cards or something like that, right? Like when I'm buying Pokemon cards, I also like buy like a book or two with it. And so one of them that I bought is this book that's called Don't Believe Everything You Think, which is the expanded edition by Joseph Nguyen. Here's the cover of it. And one of the things, let's see, hopefully I don't take too long to find it, but I was reading through it, and a lot of it is kind of interesting, in the sense of like I've been trying to get better at like understanding my thought processes. I'm a very big like overthinker and kind of have a lot of like anxiety when it comes to like thinking about things or like reacting to new situations. So I've been trying to like work on I guess thinking more about my thinking, like critically thinking. Um that and just kind of like reading a bunch of things, like things that just interest me, that like I feel like the joy of reading comes from reading things that like you want to read and not necessarily just doing it to like perform the act of it, because if you don't enjoy the book then like why are you doing it, right? Same thing goes for your job, which is another thing that I talked about. But anyway, I digress. We found the quote, which is on page 18 of the book, which basically says that the main topic of what I want to talk about today is this quote, which is reality is what is happening right now. It is the objective circumstance that is occurring without any meaning or judgment attached to it. And so what we experience is not reality itself, but our perception of reality. Any meaning or thinking we give to something is self created and our choice. And it kind of got me thinking a lot about like my own personal life of like events that happen and like events that I perceive as negative. Like for example, like getting rejected by somebody. It happens. It happens to everybody, but it's like um being able to perceive that event differently from other people, and like even though like certain people will also experience rejection. I mean, it happens everywhere, right? It's probably happening right now. Someone's getting rejected. I mean, it could be like from anything, relationship, job, um asking for time off. I mean, it literally could be anything. But like you could be experiencing that same event, and like this idea that two people can experience the exact same event sometimes at the exact same time, and like their feelings about the event will be completely different. I think one of the examples the book mentions is like the idea of like people watching and sitting and watching TV, right? Like one person might be super busy and they feel like, sitting there watching TV is kind of just a waste of their time, and they're spending their whole time just miserable because all they're thinking about is work, 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 right? And like counting down the hours until the next workday starts. Another person could just be there like chilling, like end of the work week. They're just kind of vibing out, not a lot of work to do. And like even though they're both in that room, sitting on the couch, watching TV at the exact same time, their experiences of watching TV are completely different. And it was something that like kind of had me thinking for a long time, which is what this series is about, which is great. But like it kind of got me thinking about like a lot of times in my life, I feel like I am very quick to label experiences good or bad. And like, you know, it's not the event. I think the biggest thing for me that I've been kind of trying to wrap my head around is like this idea that like the event that happens itself, for example, watching TV, getting rejected from something, um, getting accepted to something, buying something, whatever it might be, right? Like that experience itself isn't inherently like good or bad. Like there are no like good or bad experiences per se, but it's the way that it becomes like something that makes you nervous or whatever. Like the feelings that come from an event come from how we perceive it. And that kind of like blew my mind, right? Because I'm like, it's so easy just to be like, like, dang, I got rejected from my dream college. This sucks. You know what I mean? But it's like, I'm sure a lot of other people like got rejected to their dream college, but like a lot of people's experiences of that are going to be so much different based on like kind of how you perceive it, and like what your reality is, what your lived reality is of like, in this case, somebody might have not got into that school, but it turns out like there's another school they got into that they really liked. But like if this was your one and only school that you applied to, then it was like, dang, this sucks. And so I still haven't read through the whole book. I've only gotten through like the first couple chapters, but like that idea of like how we perceive things is like creates the feeling around a memory or the feeling around an event is such a powerful thing because it's like if you stop thinking about everything in negative context that happens to you, of course it's going to be like good or bad. But I think one of the things that I've been trying to do that I think I might have mentioned before that I've done like subconsciously, like without reading this book before I've done it, which was like there's a lot of days where I have bad days at work. And, you know, my mom has a lot of bad days at work, which she loves to tell me about, which is great. But like everybody has bad days at work, but like there's days where I feel like I'm falling behind, where I feel like I'm not getting enough done, even though like I'm sitting there frustrated. I'm just trying to work through things and like just things don't work, right? Like there's just days where you don't get it and like you're just asking for help and like everything is just going wrong. But like those days I've tried to kind of view them from the lens of like a learning lesson that even though I'm making mistakes, even though I'm taking a lot longer than I think I need to, like I'm still learning and I feel like I'm still growing from those and that I treat those days as learning lessons. And if I treat them as such, then it turns out that when I look back at those days, I look back a lot fonder or a lot like softer on them because I'm not thinking about, oh dang, like I was terrible this day. I didn't do enough. Like I should have just worked harder or whatever. Like the common things that you always like self-deprecate about. But instead I look back and I'm like, I was able to learn a lot and it was difficult, but I ended up coming out stronger through the other side. And like I'm very grateful because without those days where I'm like learning or like failing or doing whatever, like I don't think I would be in the position where I am now where I feel like more confident in doing that stuff later on. And that's like something that like it kind of like just like the light bulb went on in my head. It just feels like kind of like a switch just flips where like wow, I kind of like understand of why like this works. You know what I mean? Like and so I think it's hard to say because of course it's not as easy as just being like for every event ever, if you just perceive it in a positive light or look at like just look for the positives and everything will be okay. Maybe that is a solution. I don't know. I haven't like got to the end of this book. I mean, it would be nice if that's like the solution or whatever the solution might be. But like um being able to just like notice that it's impossible to say that like events or like things that happen in your life are just inherently bad and instead like work on finding different ways to perceive them and then because like that perception of how we view things is like what shapes our feelings about it is like it's just like it feels so like insane to think about because it's like it's so true And I never thought about things that way. That like, you know, it's all about like your own personal framing. And you know, I think that's super cool. And um what do I want to say? I think it was also interesting to hear like too, like kind of realize that fact that like you're not alone in this. That like there's a lot of people that experience a lot of things every single day. And there's a lot of times where a lot of people, or at least more people than I think we realize, are experiencing the exact same thing at the exact same time, or like something similar that we have in our past. Like I'm not the first person to struggle making CAD drawings. I'm not the first person to struggle on my like RF homework or whatever it is, right? I'm not the first person to struggle putting taking a bottle cap off of a bottle. Those who know, but like I'm not the first person to do that, but it's instead of that, what's it called? Like that event itself isn't bad. Like not being able to take a bottle cap off a water bottle isn't inherently bad. It's just like the way that you perceive it, which is like maybe it's embarrassing, maybe it's like dang, like it hurts your ego a little bit because it's like a water bottle. I lost a 1V to a water bottle, but like stuff like that. But our ability to perceive things in a different way, and that changing how we view it, kind of like clicked something in my head too of like, this is why like a lot of times in my past where it's like it's like the same thing goes for like watching a movie, like that's why like almost why like two people who can sit there and watch the same movie will come to different conclusions based on their interests, based on how they perceive things, like whether like sometimes it's like a hidden meaning in the movie or something like that, right? Like it could be anything, but I feel like that ability to perceive the same thing in two different ways is such a super cool thing, because it's like I kind of mentioned it a little bit at the end of the last video, but like having that individuality of like each person's different, and the way they perceive things is different, and thus they might label things positive or negative based on their lived experience like differently. And that whole idea feels like kind of like something like really like started to make sense of like why things are like that. But I think that's partially why I'm trying to like I hope that like just generally that people don't try to just conform, with like whatever the social norm is, whatever they think, like just because their buddy said something that like they're gonna let them shape their reality. I feel like a big part of it is you should experience life, and based on how you feel about things, like whether it is good or bad, maybe it does suck, and you view an event as like a negative thing, like, and that's how you perceive it, like that's fine. But like letting someone else change that reality for you, I feel like in a majority of cases is like not good. And you kind of like it just feels like you lose a sense of like your humanity if you let other people just kind of like dictate your reality for you, and tell you what's good, tell you what's bad. Of course there's like good and bad, right? Like good and bad in the sense of like not like murder, you know what I'm saying, but like more in the sense of like stuff like that's harmless, like movies, for example. If a friend tells you a movie's bad, I wouldn't let them just like shape your reality of like you just think this movie is bad and don't even go to watch it. Go to watch it, see the movie, come to your own conclusion, and be able to kind of discuss it. Maybe say, hey, I really like this movie. I thought like X, Y, and Z was pretty cool, stuff like that. But like I think keeping your own lived reality and making coming to determinations yourself about your perceptions of things that are good and bad is super important. I think it's super cool that like everybody can experience the same thing differently. And I think that's part of what makes us human. And I think the biggest thing though is to always remember that like events themselves aren't necessarily good or bad. You can't label an event good or bad because it's simply just down to how you perceive it, and like kind of how you live, or like how you look at it in the past or like in the present, or however you might look at it. But it's all about how you perceive it, and that's like what makes it good or bad. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Um, Definitely an interesting book. I'm gonna try and read more of it. I don't know if I'll make this like a running thing of like my book club or whatever, of like, or like talk about stuff that I read a lot more. But it's definitely a good read so far, and so hopefully I can get through it in like not too long of time, and I'm very interested to see what else the book brings, because I do definitely believe a lot of things that I think. And part of the sample text on the bottom says, "While your thinking is the end of it is the beginning and end of suffering." So that, and like also I spent a lot of time in college randomly studying Buddhism, so this kind of makes sense in terms of like suffering and pain and whatever the hell. But definitely an interesting read so far. So hopefully I'll enjoy the rest of it. Just like hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of my videos. Wow, great segue. It is late as I don't want to swear, but it is late. So sorry. Bear with me. But if you would like to see any of my other videos, I'll throw them in this corner up here. And here's a little sub button. But at least for this video, if you liked it, please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any opinions on it. I'd love to hear your opinions. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you again for another episode of this series, or whatever this video journal is. Sorry it's late and windy, but best I could do.